2018. I would like to remind members of the public that the Commission does not tolerate any disruption or outbursts of any kind. Please silence your mobile devices that may sound off during these proceedings. And when speaking before the Commission, if you care to, do state your name for the record. I'd like to take roll at this time. Commission President Hillis.
Here.
Commissioner Fong.
Here.
Commissioner Koppel.
Here.
And Commissioner Moore.
Here.
We do expect Commissioners Melgar, Johnson, and Richards to be absent today. Commissioners, first on your agenda is consideration of items proposed for continuance. Item 1, case number 2017-001283 CUA at 792 Cap Street is proposed for continuance to May 17, 2018. Item 2, case number 2015-009015 DRP-03 at 75, 77, 79 through 81 Leland Avenue is proposed for continuance to June 7th, 2018. Item 3, case number 2018-003260 PCA for public parking lots as a permitted use in the Glen Park NCT and adjoining locations. Planning Code Amendment is proposed for continuance to June 7th, 2018. Items 4A and B for case numbers 2015-015010 OFA and CUA at 1 DeHaro Street and Office Development Authorization and Conditional Use Authorization are proposed for continuance to June 14th, 2018. Item 5, case number 2014.1459 CUA at 214 State Street is proposed for continuance to June 14th, 2018. And finally, item 6, case number 2015-008252 DRP at 89 Roosevelt Way. A discretionary review is proposed for continuance to June 21st, 2018. I have no speaker cards.
Thank you, Jonas. Any public comment on the items being proposed for continuance? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Koppel?
Yeah, motion, move to continue items 1, 2, 3, 4, A and B, 5, and 6 to the date specified.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. On that motion, then, to continue all items as proposed, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0 and places us under your consent calendar. The matter listed here under constitutes the consent calendar, is considered to be routine by the Planning Commission and may be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the Commission. There will be no separate discussion of this item unless a member of the Commission, the public, or staff so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item at this or a future hearing. Item 7, case number 2017-000514, CUA at 2001 Market Street, conditional use authorization. I have no speaker cards.
All right. Anybody would like to speak on the item on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Moore.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. On that motion, then, to approve item 7 under consent, Commissioner Fong.
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel.
Aye.
Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis.
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0 and places us under Commission matters. Item 8, consideration of adoption draft minutes for the April 19th, 2018 hearing.
Any public comment on the draft minutes? Seeing none, Commissioner Fong.
Move to approve draft minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. On that motion, then, to adopt the minutes for April 19th, 2018, Commissioner Fong.
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel.
Aye.
Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis.
Aye.
So moved. That motion passes unanimously. Item 9, Commission comments and questions.
Seeing none, Jonas, we can move
Very
to the
good.
next item.
Department matters. Item 10, Director's announcements.
No new announcements today, Commissioners. Thank you.
Amazing. Item 11, review of past events at the Board of Supervisors, Board of Appeals, and Historic Preservation Commission.
Is it on?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Aaron Starr, Manager of Legislative Affairs. On the land use agenda this week was an ordinance sponsored by Supervisor Kim to allow the legitimization and reestablishment of certain self-storage uses. This ordinance is being proposed to allow the Hall of Justice to store its records at a property that is currently used as a self-storage facility. The ordinance would allow the building to revert back to that use once the city vacates the property. Commissioners, you heard this item on April 19th and voted unanimously to approve the ordinance with staff's recommendations, all of which were clerical in nature. Supervisor Kim amended the ordinance to include the Commission's recommendations. At the hearing, there was no significant discussion on the item by the committee members, and there was no public comment. The item was forwarded to the full board with a positive recommendation. Then to the full board this week, the Lower Polk Alcohol Restricted Use District passed its second read, and the establishment of the LGBTQ Leather Cultural District resolution was adopted. And so far, I have no introductions. Concludes my report.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Fry, Department staff, here to share with you just a couple items from yesterday's Historic Preservation Commission hearing. Along with the Central Soma package of nominations that will come before this commission, the HPC voted to initiate creation of the Mint Mission Conservation District, which surrounds the old Mint along Mission and Fifth. This conservation district, along with the other districts initiated under the Central Soma Plan, will be before you for review and comment at your hearing next week. The commission unanimously approved initiation, and there were a few members of the public, property owners, that spoke both in support and had additional questions regarding the responsibilities and benefits of local designation. And so we continue our outreach efforts through the Central Soma hearing process to keep those property owners informed. And then finally, I wanted to just make you aware, although you probably have heard, that the Arts Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission filed a joint briefing for a request for rehearing for the certificate of appropriateness to remove the early days sculpture from the Pioneer Monument. We understand that rehearing request will be on June 13th. And that concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Anything from Board of Appeals?
Apparently not.
All right, thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Fry?
Commissioners, it'll place us under general public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the commission on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission, except agenda items. With respect to agenda items, your opportunity to address the commission will be afforded when the item is reached in the meeting. Each member of the public may address the commission for up to 3 minutes. I did have several speaker cards.
Georgia Shudish, Gustavo Leao, Cynthia Montes, Dane Insay.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
All four of you. Yesterday's paper, in addition to the wonderful photo of Stephen Curry coming back to play in that wonderful game the other night, was the thing about the report, States Housing Growing. And I thought the numbers were interesting, but I'll leave it for Commissioner Richards to bring it up when he returns. What I wanted to mention was a year ago, on May 4th, actually, you had a DR hearing for a project on 24th Street up the hill just below Market. And that you took DR and you reduced the deck that was off of the upper level. It was a horizontal and vertical, two-story vertical addition, turning a single-family home into a two-unit building. Facade change as well. And it's interesting, last week or 2 weeks ago, two people came up to me and said, vertical addition. And here's the project as it is now. There. That's the main picture. You can see the machine in the back. Here's a broader picture of it. Here's another close-up. I sort of want to highlight behind the garage there. And then there's that, more detailed. This picture is interesting because it sort of looks like there's new wood there, but can't tell. I just took these on Sunday. So what's my point? Well, there's about 4 or 5 complaints outstanding on it. People are having trouble, adjacent neighbors are having trouble with their foundation and just their adjacent yards. So I guess, and you approved it May 4th, and it did go to the Board of Appeals sometime that summer after the permit was issued. But on November of 2017, it was sold. So, and as the hearing said, the family that owned it said they needed the space. So, you know, I just think that the whole is this a demolition? Certainly is ironic in light of what happened last week with 365 store on the Lombardi site. So I just wanted to show these pictures again. Someone gave them to me and said something to me about vertical additions. Does that mean it's a demolition? It's stuff we've seen before. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Cynthia Montez, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak once again. This time I would like to share with you my family life at Baycrest, and my topic is the 430 Main project. My family life at Baycrest over the past 25 years. I moved into Baycrest in 1993 with my 5-year-old son. During the week, we would catch the 41 on Howard and Main to go to school in North Beach. On weekends, we would ride our bicycles in the various parking lots. There was a very large selection to pick from, and well before the bike lanes along the Embarcadero. The building on the northeast corner of Main and Harrison was vacant and had railroad tracks where the front door is today. I'm sure the sidewalk has covered that up. Next door to this building, the other half of the block, was an empty lot where they used to give motorcycle classes. Now another high-rise building exists where a hole was dug for 10 levels of underground parking, and they uncovered a ship from the Gold Rush era. That was quite a hole. The temporary Transbay terminal consisted of 2 parking lots. We only had 2 small grocery deli stores, which were Bayside Market and the other on Howard and Stewart. A few years later, Baycrest got a small deli, and after many years, we finally got a Safeway. We continued to live through the construction of many new buildings where some of the infrastructure convenience of other established neighborhoods wouldn't have experienced. We lived through the Bay Bridge retrofit. I feel like I heard every rivet go into that bridge. And we helped to make Caltrans a livable neighbor. They had phones that rang as a horn in the yard starting at 6 a.m. in the morning, including Sundays. We lived through the construction of the Pat Bell Park, subsequently SBC and AT&T, and survived the impact it had on the neighborhood while the kinks were being worked out. My point is that my family was a pioneer for this up-and-coming new community. My son went on to graduate at St. Peter's and Paul and Sacred Heart, after which he went to graduate Camp Pendleton as a Marine, and 1 year to the date of graduation went to Iraq. He was recently graduated from college. We are an average family trying to be part of a successful building of this great community. We're only asking for steps to help preserve our center courtyard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Gustavo Leo, and I am with Baycrest. I'm here to talk about the same project. I want to start by saying thank you and apologizing at the same time. I don't really want to wear out my welcome here. I understand this is the second time that we're here for public comment. I'm just here just to bring you new information. In our last meeting on April the 29th, you directed the department to look into 2 alternatives. The first one was the 2-tower design. The second one was some sort of mass reduction in the middle of the building. The department has come up with a mass reduction design. They call it the cutout design. It will be part of your package in next week's meeting. Now, the 2-tower design, however, has not been fully considered by the department. Planning has merely included information from the developer stating that the 2-tower design is not feasible and it doesn't pencil out. I am here just to say that we feel that you should have the privilege to listen and to look at both alternatives fully analyzed. I respectfully ask you to have David Wislow, city planning architect, who designed the 2-tower concept back in 2014 when this project was first submitted, to attend our meeting next week. So he will be available to address any questions that you may have. Here you have the 2-tower design, and I don't see it showing on the screen. This is actually what David Whistler calls a two-building design that would be a two-tower design. To the left and to the right with our center courtyard with open spaces meeting in the middle. I would like to read a email that David Whistler, wrote to Doug Vu, the planner in charge of the project. I quote from David Whistler to Doug Vu, subject 430 Main, date Monday, April the 24th. Doug, these are the talking points for our counter proposal. Essentially, the closer to code compliance, the better. He's referring to this design. Plus a more defensible position vis-a-vis to the adjacent residents. Massing that respects mid-block open spaces, 144 dwelling units at the same size as proposed, 40% two bedrooms, exposure exception limited to 16 units only instead of 43%. Commissioners, I'm just asking you humbly, please take a look what the city did in the beginning of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dane Entz. I reside at 201 Harrison Street. We have this diagram here was produced in 2014 by the project sponsor, and what it shows, it's a little bit, I apologize for the print, but what it shows is in one area over here, there's two sets of elevators, and then there's another elevator over here. And then in 2015, that elevator disappeared, and it turned into a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing room, which seems to be very convenient to argue against the two-tower design by saying, oh, gee, we can't afford an extra elevator. So we just wanted to bring this to your attention. At one time, there was two sets of elevators contemplated for this project, and then somehow or another, the other set of elevators magically disappeared. Further, I want to show you this. This is from Ramble, and what it shows is it shows really a fatal flaw in the design of this proposal. You can see that the light blue figure there is the proposed building at 430 Main and 429 Beale, and the dark green there is a concentration of PM2.5. Now, the reason that happens that way is because the wind comes from the northwest, and their building shelters most of their open space and their balconies. Now, this is really important, not that we're complaining about existing conditions. What we're complaining about, or what we hope to accomplish, is to get some kind of responsive alteration in the design that doesn't create problems for the future residents and doesn't create a nuisance and a hazard on our property. The project sponsor has mentioned many times about the $14 million that the city is going to get in taxes. And I'd like to put that in perspective if we start talking about health consequences here of the decision to have this design go forward. Actually, the risk of getting cancer in this area is 1 in 10,000. So what's the cost? What's the cost to the families, to loss of work, loss of productivity, and stuff like that, when we consider that new drugs coming on the market can cost as much as $475,000 a year? So anyway, it needs a little work. Also, I have a packet here, and all the way going back from 2014, 2015, and 2017, the planning department has indicated that they suggest that the project sponsor consider mirroring the project massing along the side lot line to relate to the adjacent property courtyard, or in some other way conjoining open space to add to the existing courtyards. So
Sure, you can leave it right there. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Todd David on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. I'm very familiar with the 430 Main Street project, and so I just want to make a couple of very brief comments. One is that the two-tower solution would call for a rezoning of the site, and there is absolutely no guarantee that it would be able to get rezoned. So let's start there, that the way that the project is being presented is currently code compliant. A two-tower system would take a rezoning. The second thing is it's my understanding this is going to be back before the commission next week. And I believe that the commission has asked the developer to make some changes. So why don't we see what the developer presents next week, and take it from there. And finally, I really want to call out Tidewater Capital for really doing the right thing. They are one of the developers. They have held 200 community meetings, so they have interacted with the community a lot. And we don't always get 100% what we want, but that doesn't mean that they're not acting in good faith. Or I would go the opposite. They go out of their way to involve the community and be very transparent. So I'm sure we'll all be back here next week for the exciting conclusion to this project, but just wanted to kind of raise those points. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any additional general public comment? Being none, we'll close general public comment and we can move to the first item on the regular calendar.
Very good, Commissioners. That'll place us under your regular calendar for item 12, case number 2018-003257, PCA reauthorizing Section 210.3C concerning new production, distribution, and repair space. This is a planning code amendment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Audrey Beckus, Planning Department staff. Before I give the staff presentation, I believe we have Supervisor Cohen's staff here, as well as staff from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, who have been very integral to this legislation. So we're going to have Supervisor Cohen's staff come up first, and then we're going to also have Susan Ma from OEWD come up, and then I'll give staff's presentation.
I think you're looking for Mr. Corrett, right?
Unless Supervisor Cohen's office is not here.
Oh, Supervisor Cohen's office, sorry.
If we could have Susan Ma from OEWD come up. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Susan Ma, and I am the Production, Distribution, and Repair Sector Manager for the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. As you already know, PDR is extremely important to San Francisco. The sector keeps our economy diverse, it creates great jobs for a wide range of people, and we want to support this growth in San Francisco. Developing new PDR space is hard, building is expensive, and the lease rates that would be necessary to make a project pencil would be out of reach for most PDR users. You're about to hear the staff report for Planning Code Section 210.3C, and the impetus of that legislation was to encourage the development of PDR space and to make it more feasible through cross-subsidization. And in a few months, you'll actually be able to walk into a building that was made possible by that legislation. PlaceMade, a nonprofit whose mission is to secure not long-term affordable industrial space to support manufacturing in San Francisco, will be opening over 50,000 square feet of below market rate manufacturing space. The future tenants of that space are homegrown businesses that will be hiring San Francisco residents. That is real impact, and this legislation is a real tool for PDR development. I just wanted to come before you today to express OEWD's extreme support of the reauthorization. Would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now for just a very brief staff presentation. The ordinance, as Ms. Moss said, would reauthorize Planning Code Section 210.3C, which supports the development of new PDR space in several PDR zoning districts. It allows for new development of certain non-residential uses, such as office and industrial, in these PDR districts, so long as those projects also include a significant amount of new PDR space. The legislation had included a sunset provision that caused the program to expire on December 31st of 2017, unless the Board of Supervisors acted to continue, extend, or modify the ordinance. The proposed legislation that's before you today was introduced by Supervisor Cohen with the intent of reestablishing this program and removing the sunset clause, making the program permanent. As of this morning, the department has not received any public comment regarding the proposed ordinance. The department recommends that the commission approve the proposed ordinance as the cross-subsidy program that was enabled by Planning Code Section 210.3C has been successful at achieving its policy objective by facilitating the development of new PDR space in underdeveloped parcels in PDR districts. The project at 100 Hooper, which houses PlaceMade, is a perfect example of the type of creative enhancing space that can exist because of the program. The program aligns with the general plan, including many objectives and policies of the commerce and industry element to promote a healthy industrial industry and accommodate for the difficulties of new industrial uses to establish in a competitive real estate market. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm also available for questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks. We'll open this up for public comment. I've got a couple speaker cards. Kate Sophis, Abby Wertheim, Lynn Liu, and Gina Falsetto.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Gina Falsetto, and I work for SF Made. I work managing the Places to Make program, and what that offers is for our manufacturers to help them with real estate, whether it's finding space, lease negotiation, et cetera. And the main problem our manufacturers have is finding space. It can take up to a year to find good manufacturing space that is affordable. I keep a running list of companies who are looking for space, and we have over 30 companies right now looking for manufacturing space in San Francisco. Places like 150 Hooper that you just heard about were created with this legislation, and it provides functional, affordable, and mainly functional, affordable manufacturing space for our members. It is a safe haven for manufacturers, and anything we can do to increase the creation of more functional PDR space is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Ms. Liu.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Liu, and I am a pattern maker, and I'm a product developer for a logo designer for manufacturing, for apparel. And I started out in 1990, and for the last 6 years, it's very difficult for local designer to survive because of the high rent. And so for the last year, I was so happy that I was able to find PlaceMade, affordable rent. So I was hoping that the city will be able to have more of this kind of affordable rent for local designers so that they can stay local, manufacturing, affordable to survive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Abby Wertheim, and I'm the Managing Director of PlaceMade. I'm speaking in support of this legislation to continue and reauthorize the PDR. We call it the Hooper legislation. I know it has a technical name, but my job at PlaceMade was to lead the financing efforts behind 150 Hooper. So it was a great collaboration between the public sector and the legislation that underlies this development. Really and truly, but for this legislation, 150 Hooper wouldn't have come into fruition. And the affordable 56,000 square foot building that we eventually purchased and will offer at affordable rents to tenants as soon as it's completed wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this legislation. So the public sector did its part, the private sector came together, and then we leveraged public monies through New Markets tax credits to actually make this project possible. So let's have more of it, and we hope that we can create more space in San Francisco for local manufacturing and production, distribution, and repair users. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, Ms. Sophis.
Good afternoon. Kate Sophis, CEO of PlaceMade and SF Made, which is PlaceMade's parent nonprofit. So 4 years ago, many of you that I'm looking at here today helped us pass a tool that was the first of its kind in this country. The idea of modeling after some of the tools we have with affordable housing, of finding a way to build a product, new PDR, that really was not buildable, and not buildable certainly in a way that would be affordable. This legislation not only has proven to be an incredible tool here in this community, but I can personally say we have communities as far away as New York City, as close as San Jose, looking at what we are doing here as a truly viable model that can work in cities where not only the housing crisis, but the construction crisis, the cost of new building is so exorbitant and so difficult to achieve. 150 Hooper, as my colleagues I think well said, we hope is not the end game. It is the beginning of a whole range of additional projects that with the passage of this legislation today and making it permanent, we will now have written a permanent tool into our code to allow us to build new and, very importantly, affordable PDR space. The building that is almost nearing completion will initially house close to a dozen manufacturers, but behind that, we have 640 other manufacturers in the city that are going to be needing space. And add into that arts organizations, repair uses, and other, and I think this body well understands the urgency that we need to leave no stone unturned. Zoning protections, absolutely, continuing to look at rehabbing our existing PDR for sure, but building new has never been more critical. These are the kinds of jobs that support the very families that we are building the affordable housing for. So with that, thank you for your past support. I want to recognize the leadership of Supervisor Cohen, the Planning Department, OEWD, my team, and I strongly encourage you to pass this legislation today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Sophis. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Fong.
Thank you. I'm obviously in support of this and agree with Ms. Sophis that this is the beginning of a new type of use, whether it's actual production, manufacturing, and some office use, and how the fine line between how all of those uses and what we consider the types of uses is so important for the future of San Francisco, new business and job creation. So I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Commissioner Moore.
I just wanted to second what many already said. I think this is an incredible example for combining good legislation with innovative private initiatives. I think the city shines as an example, not just here in California. I've talked about this internationally. I heard it in the American Planning Association in New Orleans. Everybody would like to do what we do, but it takes a special breed of planning legislators as well as an incredibly active and astute private sector to make something like that happen. I am in strong support. I thank Supervisor Cohen for really being astute and aware when this needs to be reauthorized. And in this particular case, we are supporting it for permanent, which is even better. And I'm in full support. Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, Commissioners, there's a motion that has been seconded to approve this amendment. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. Commissioners, that'll place us on item 13 for case number 2018-004477 PCA, the Central Soma Housing Sustainability District. Informational presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Joshua Switsky with planning staff. Next week on May 10th, you'll have the Central Soma Plan adoption before you, including all of its actions, the EAR certification, general plan, code amendments, etc. Over the past several Central Soma hearings, we've discussed housing at great length, and there seems to be a widely held desire to both ensure that the full complement of potential housing in Central Soma is realized and that we expedite this housing so that we get it as soon as possible and all the benefits that come with it, including affordable housing. As we've also discussed at several of the past hearings this year, one of the options now available to the city to achieve this goal of expediting housing is through implementation of a housing sustainability district in Central Soma pursuant to Assembly Bill 73, which was adopted last year by the state. Since we were last here a few weeks ago discussing Central Soma, Supervisor Kim and Mayor Farrell co-sponsored legislation that they submitted, which will also be before you next week to hear and take formal consideration on in tandem with all your other Central Soma Plan items. The department, we think this dovetails very nicely with the plan, and it's an exciting opportunity that hasn't been available to the city in past plans that we've adopted. So today we're here to present to you the specifics of the proposed ordinance and have a discussion so that you can be prepared to take action on it next week alongside the other Central Soma items. So I'll hand it off to Paolo Ikezoe to walk you through it. Thank you.
Afternoon, excuse me. Good afternoon, commissioners. Paolo Ikezoe with Planning Department staff with the Citywide Division. So today I'll just give you a brief presentation on the proposed Central Soma Housing Sustainability District, which, as Josh mentioned, will be coming before you next week for adoption. So today I'll give you a brief overview of AB 73, which is the state law that enabled housing sustainability districts. Then I'll cover the features of the Central Soma plan that make it sort of ideal for designation as an HSD. And finally, I'll go over the local ordinance to create and implement a Central Soma HSD, which was introduced at the Board of Supervisors this past Tuesday. I'll try and keep my presentation brief so we can have plenty of time for questions and answers and public comment. So AB 73 was introduced by Assembly Member David Chu in December 2016, signed into law in September of last year. It authorizes local municipalities to create housing sustainability districts, which are, I think, envisioned as overlay districts over existing zoning within which housing projects meeting certain criteria can receive ministerial approval of permits. Cities that create qualifying HSDs are eligible to receive zoning incentive payments from the state. AB 73 lays out some minimum requirements that all HSDs must meet in order to qualify. First of all, they must be within 1/2 mile of public transit or otherwise highly suitable for residential or mixed-use development. The state law says that an HSD shall be effective for no more than 10 years, with the possibility for an extension of an additional 10 years. The area of an individual district must not be larger than 15% of the city's total land area, and the district must allow for ministerial approval of housing projects. Within the entire district, at least 20% of all housing units must be made affordable to very low, or moderate income households for a period of no less than 55 years. Again, this is the state law requirement. A local ordinance that creates any district must include procedures and timelines for the review of projects within that district. And then finally, a local municipality must prepare an EIR identifying any mitigation measures that housing projects within that district must undertake to mitigate any environmental impacts. The state law, AB 73, also included minimum requirements for projects within HSDs. So a project must be located in a zoning district that principally permits residential use. A project can include no more than 50% of its proposed square footage as non-residential use, so basically it has to be majority residential. And each project has to include at least 10% of the units on site as affordable to lower income households. So I'm sort of skipping ahead a little bit, but in San Francisco, this means all projects are required to satisfy Section 415, so that would remain in place, but the state law requires 10%. Skip over. This is kind of the big main point of AB 73 is prevailing wage or skilled and trained labor requirements. So in order to qualify for approval under an HSD, a project, if it is 74 units or fewer, with some exceptions, has to agree to pay prevailing wages to all workers involved in the construction of the project. That threshold is lowered to 49 units or less, so basically it captures more projects after January 1st, 2022. If a project is larger than 75 units, then the project sponsor actually has to agree to use a skilled and trained workforce, so union labor, to complete the construction of the project. And again, this threshold goes down to any project of 50 units or more on January 1st, 2022. So we think Central Soma is a pretty good candidate for an HSD for several reasons. The plan area meets all of the size requirements of AB 73. As you all know, the area plan process involves several years of deliberation with the community and results in some clear zoning, height, design standards. The plan estimates that 33% of all new housing produced within the plan area will be permanently affordable, which exceeds AB 73's 20% requirement. And finally, the Central Soma Plan EIR has done extensive analysis of impacts of future growth under the proposed zoning and height changes, and has identified specific mitigation measures. So a local ordinance would meet all requirements of AB 73. It would define the Central Soma HSD geography as all parcels within the Central Soma SUD, which is that same boundary of the area plan. And then it will add some local eligibility criteria so that we can tailor the HSD to our local context. And finally, it'll specify design review, approval, and enforcement processes. So the first main criteria that our local ordinance will add is to limit the size of projects able to participate in the HSD and receive ministerial approval. So as currently drafted, projects with a height of over 160 feet would not be eligible for ministerial approval, so they would still be required to go through our kind of standard design review and entitlement process. An exception is 100% affordable projects. So 100% affordable projects of any height would be potentially eligible to receive ministerial approval if they meet all of the other criteria. Our local ordinance will ensure that non-residential uses in mixed-use projects don't bypass our otherwise applicable local controls. So for example, only principally permitted uses will be eligible for ministerial approval. So anything that requires a CU, whether it's hotel, formula retail, CUs will still be required. If a mixed-use project proposes some office space, that office space, if it's greater than 25,000 square feet, will still need to go through the office allocation process. This is a little bit of a backtrack, but this is a map of the proposed heights in the Central Soma plan. And so, as I said previously, anywhere where the height district is higher than 160, those parcels would not be eligible to participate. But just if you kind of look at this, anywhere that's not dark pink or red is under 160. So it's a pretty large, in terms of land area, part of the Central Soma plan that would be potentially eligible. Another thing our local ordinance will ensure is no impact to historic resources. So any projects on parcels containing buildings listed in Articles 10 or 11 are not eligible for ministerial approval. Any project proposing to demolish, remove, or convert any existing dwelling unit is also not eligible for ministerial approval. And then HSD projects will have to comply with any mitigation measures identified as applicable in the EIR, and they'll have to do this sort of before, they'll have to either agree to comply with those mitigation measures, or if that mitigation measure is, for example, a wind study, they'll have to complete that study before they are determined eligible to participate in the HSD. So introducing a ministerial process will be a bit of a change for us in this department. But as far as design review, all HSD projects will still be reviewed against our recently adopted urban design guidelines and the Central Soma Guide to Urban Design. AB 73 requires all HSD projects to receive a public hearing. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And AB 73 also mandates a decision within 120 days. So we are going to start that clock of 120 days when we've sort of received a complete application and what we're calling a stable project description. As far as monitoring and enforcement, we, like any other project, will be putting conditions of approval. So the union requirements, the on-site requirements will be put in the conditions of approval. And so that will be sort of the enforcement mechanism. Any violation of those is a violation of the planning code. And so they'll be treated as such. As far as the labor requirements, the wage and labor requirements, the local ordinance directs the OLSE, the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement, to be the monitoring body. So about that informational hearing, as the ordinance is drafted right now, it's a hearing. The hearing needs to be a Brown Act hearing. That's what AB 73 requires. It doesn't say anything about necessarily where it has to take place. So currently, our local ordinance has it as a hearing held at the planning department. So the planning department would hold a hearing within 100 days of receipt of a complete application. We would notice it as we are going to be noticing all projects under our new noticing guidelines that were introduced. And then the local ordinance also includes what we're calling a progress requirement. I think you may have mentioned this as a use it or lose it provision. So after receiving entitlement, an HSD project would have 36 months to pull a first building or site permit. If the project does not meet that deadline, then the director must hold a hearing to determine whether the project is making a good faith effort towards starting construction. If the project sponsor cannot prove a good faith effort, then the director must revoke the entitlement. So this is that use it or lose it. So next steps is next week. There is an adoption hearing here with all of you. And after that, it'll go on to the Board of Supervisors. And so because this is a state law, it will need to be certified by HCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development. And once it's certified by HCD, then it will sort of become our local law. So with that, I'm here for any questions you have. We also have Sarah Dennis Phillips from the mayor's office. We have Moses Corrett from Supervisor Kim's office. And so after public comment, we're here for any questions you have.
All right, thank you. I'm sure we will. Let's open it up first to public comment. I've got one speaker card, David Wu. But if others would like to speak, please line up on the screen side of the room. Welcome, Mr. Wu.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is David Wu with the South of Market Community Action Network. The public is just hearing about the creation of this housing sustainability district. If this is going to be incorporated into and implemented within the Central SOMA Plan, the Central SOMA Plan cannot be adopted by the Planning Commission next week. And no action should be taken yet by the Planning Commission on the plan. The public needs time to actually assess this new component of the plan. This is the first time that we are hearing about it. There was no public outreach or notification regarding this informational hearing on the Housing Sustainability District that I was aware of. I've just received a notification noting that there will be a Housing Sustainability District via email after this commission hearing already started, but it didn't reference that there was an informational hearing on it. Regarding the plan as a whole, we are very concerned that the public still needs more time for input and conversation on this plan that will impact not just the South of Market, but the entire city of San Francisco. This new Housing Sustainability District just adds to the need for more time and discussion. While the Central SOMA Plan focuses on maximizing profits for developers by upzoning and streamlining the development process, the plan does not create any new policies aimed at addressing eviction displacement and gentrification pressures that will come as a result of the plan. SOMCAN has outlined the following emergency steps for the Central SOMA Plan in order to address the built-in components of gentrification and displacement and to stabilize the existing community now before the plan is implemented. These include, before the plan is passed, there must be aggressive acquisition of rent-controlled buildings, aggressive site acquisition for new 100% affordable housing, the creation of a right of first refusal for residential renters, commercial renters, and nonprofits, and a moratorium on the sale of existing rent-controlled buildings, the sale of public land for private or for-profit development, and on any new market rate housing construction for projects not included in the existing Central SOMA plan. Additionally, the following changes must also be made to the Central SOMA plan before the plan is implemented, including reaching 50% affordable housing for any new market rate housing development with an AMI range of 30 to 90% for new affordable units, and a mandatory land dedication of sites for affordable housing for any new development that is 1 acre or larger. The public needs more time for conversation, input, and discussion, as again is highlighted by this informational hearing. And we need this because this plan, again, will impact the entire city of San Francisco, not just the South of Market. Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd David on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. I want to thank OEWD, Sarah Dennis Phillips. I want to thank, I know Moses was there. The building trades were there for these discussions about this particular project. I want to, thank David Chu for doing AB 73. I mean, this is exactly what we were hoping would happen from this type of legislation, that we'd be able to get more housing that's going to have really well-paying jobs, it's going to create affordable housing, and we're going to get it as quickly as possible. And so this is really, to me, sacramental legislation, being able to work in conjunction with San Francisco and getting what we need, housing into Central SOMA that's going to be union jobs and it's going to be providing middle-income housing. I have to comment on this call for 50% affordable housing, right? I mean, we are seeing projects right now in the Mission disappearing because they can't afford 23%, 24%, 30% affordable. Let's be clear, a call for 50% affordable housing is a call for zero housing. 0% or 50% of zero is zero. So it sounds great. I mean, let's call for 75%, but we can't get 20% to pencil right now. So this call for 50%, it's a great headline, but it means let's have no housing. And so let's just have that honest conversation. So anyway, AB 73, we're really excited to see it happen, and we think it's going to be a great addition, and thanks to everyone who helped.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Alex Landsberg with the electrical construction industry. So I just wanted to address a couple things about this housing sustainability district. It may be that it's coming to you under a different name, but I do know for a fact that we've talked about it a number of times here at the Commission, specifically within the context of figuring out how we expedite the construction of housing in the area, how we guarantee that the housing that's built has on-site inclusionary built in so that we don't have to fight over these things, and ultimately so we can provide the additional community benefit of getting local construction jobs out of the plan. I think overall this has been moving forward in a generally deliberative fashion, and I think with the strength of it, and I think it has been the fact that Supervisor Kim's office, the mayor's office, as well as those of us in the building trade side of things have been working extensively to really try to make sure that it addresses all those particular aspects. In terms of other community benefits and sort of the emergency measures, I'm not going to take a position one way or the other, but I don't think that they're necessarily all that unreasonable. I think many of them are Board of Supervisors level decisions that would have to be made, and I think we can do these things in parallel. And lastly, about 50% affordable housing, I'll disagree with Todd here. It is feasible, but it is feasible under circumstances like what we're seeing in Berkeley with the large SB 35 project, and again, really using many of the same tools that are being relied on here with the Housing Sustainability District. So we're excited that this is moving forward. I think getting labor standards in large area plans has been sort of a white whale for me in many ways. I've been chasing this thing for at least 12 years. And I think it's great that we're seeing state legislation that enables it and creates the incentive structure to provide a whole range of community benefits with these area plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tony Robles, Senior in Disability Action. Just to echo what my colleague from SOMCAN had to say about the proposal, the community really does need to be more involved in the discourse to work out concerns about eviction, displacement, and the levels of affordable housing, acquisitions of properties. It's something that we're very concerned about in SOMA, that these changes are going to be taking hold and going to be impacting many, many people. Many of these people are in the community that we serve, seniors and people with disabilities. We need to make sure that they're at the table, that their concerns are heard and articulated within the discourse. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Koppel.
Thanks, Mr. President. Really excited to be here today, involved with the Housing Sustainability District and what will be the Central SOMA hearing next week. I think this is a big game changer for us as a city, and I think it's very fitting that we still have such a good relationship with our assemblymen and senators up in Sacramento that they can literally craft and provide us tools to expedite housing, but do it in a responsible manner with everyone on board from the beginning. And it's also pretty fitting that this could potentially be happening in David's actual assembly district, which I think is a great idea. So also the one other point that sticks out, which I'm really proud of, is the 10% of on-site affordable units. We can't choose whether projects use on-site or the in lieu fee option, but I think just in the spirit of what we are trying to do up here in the big picture, that this is a really big step in the right direction, and hopefully this will result in faster approval of better projects.
Thanks. Commissioner Moore.
This is a great coincidence in time. I think it leverages public benefits. It's overtly supportive of labor, something this commission is strongly supportive of. The only thing is it comes at a speed that is hard to grasp. I understand that it has been mentioned before. I personally was completely unaware of it. And in the end, as always, the devil is in the details. The one gap I have a harder time understanding is it is a state law. In order to compare it in its effectiveness for Central SOMA, I'd like to get a quick overview, perhaps not today, of how it applies to the state, where none of the criteria for housing really apply. Buildings under 160 feet, our discussions about housing in other communities hardly ever go to 160 feet, they barely go to 30 or 40. So I'm kind of curious of how this tracks across in the statewide discussion. I see the benefits in a housing market. I see this as a very advantageous tool for speeding up construction and approvals of projects. I think the timelines are really good. Do they infer additional value? They may. Does that create an extra bump in benefits? Perhaps it should. Perhaps not in the first number of years, but as it proves to be successful in subsequent years. It raises all kinds of questions, but there is, out of breath, hardly any time to talk about it, nor to raise those questions. If the Assembly bill sets minimum standards, does the city itself need maximum standards? Is 10% affordable guaranteed on site all we can get, or can we push for more? Because we have many projects where developers volunteer to do much more, given this, the shortage of resources on land and sites. A slightly higher on-site affordable would be something I would definitely ask the question, why not? So there's a bunch of questions. It's very hard to be coherent at this moment because it is a new subject matter. I do regret that we have 3 commissioners here who are not here today and can participate in even having this presentation, and I think we may ask for them on their behalf that before they come back next Thursday, there is extra time allocated for the staff to briefly talk to them about this important matter. So.
One, I think I like this piece of legislation. I think it's a pretty simple, straightforward implementing tool. We've spent years, obviously, doing the Central SOMA plan. It's just saying what we've approved. In while it's all not final, and I think Mr. Wu, you bring up some kind of legitimate points on the policy of the plan and some of what's in the plan, like acquiring more rent-controlled sites or utilizing city land for affordable housing. That doesn't change the plan or this necessarily. I mean, it could change the plan, but this really helps us implement the plan and implement it in a way that does it expeditiously, and so it gets more housing online quicker, both affordable housing and inclusionary housing as well as market rate housing. So I think this is a great tool. A couple questions, though, that the public hearing. So could that public hearing be here if you chose to do it here? I mean, is there flexibility in where that public hearing is?
Yes.
I mean, so it's not, if you wanted to bring it to a commission after you had a hearing, you could do that? If you thought things were...
Yeah, it's totally flexible.
Okay.
It just needs to be compliant with the Brown Act.
Okay. In the use or lose provision, again, you can make the decision on that, because if we, I like that, but again, we can hit a recession and financing dries up and there's no ability to build housing. So we don't have to take that entitlement away. We can continue it.
That's right.
If need be.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Paulo, but it gives, the director would have to have a hearing, but there is flexibility in deciding if the permit is revoked or not.
Right, okay. In the zoning incentive payment that this talks, what is that?
So it's kind of one of the TBD things. It is a payment that the state will at some point decide how much money there is and then give out to cities that have sort of implemented qualifying HSDs. But as of now, they haven't gotten to the point of actually deciding how much money there is.
On what the city does with that payment, or what it could be used for? I guess
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's a zoning incentive payment, so I think it's just cash money that we receive.
Cash prizes, but it could be used for affordable housing or infrastructure. It's not yet
I think,
defined.
to be fair, I don't think we're talking a lot of money here.
Okay. Some small
I was in
nuggets of
the
incentive.
tens of thousands of dollars, I think, when I saw it.
In the, things like, not demoing a historic building or impacting a historic resource or no demo of rent control, those are our own rules.
Right.
Our implementing rules, which I think are great.
As well as the height limit. I mean, the height, cities can
ask.
choose to put any height they want.
Right.
We've chosen 160 as the max.
I get the historic resource in the existing rent control, but why do the 160? I mean, again, I think it's the same theory. If we've gone down this path and approved a plan with heights that are greater than 160 feet, and there are not a ton of them, well, why not include those in this? I mean, but why are you all recommending?
Well, we haven't made a recommendation yet. This is the legislation that was introduced this week by the mayor and Supervisor Kim.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, but you'd still have some design review in-house.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't see necessarily a rationale if we're going to do it, why we would not include all residential. I mean, we're in a housing crisis. The buildings over 160 feet give us more. I don't see the policy difference and would want to include the buildings over 160 feet. Commissioner Moore.
My understanding was that 165 feet was partially crafted by labor because it goes into types of construction. That is my understanding of it, but I may be wrong.
This was 160 feet.
Right, yes.
Yeah,
So,
Commissioners, if I could just clarify, the 160 was something that the city put forward. It's not in the state law. To answer Commissioner Moore's question earlier, the 160 doesn't exist in the state law. It's the city, the sponsors have proposed that as the upper threshold, and I believe it's just under some recognition that buildings taller than that have a significant stature on the skyline and so forth, and the commission might want to have some more discretion over the ultimate design of those projects than.
Right. But you still have some discretion at the staff level and the professional design level to look at the design of these projects.
Yeah, to the extent that it's spoken to by the adopted design standards that we have adopted.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have more, Commissioner Moore?
Yes, Mr. Schwitzky, is there any possibility for the public to direct questions in the next week? I can understand when something, what looks like a very big piece of overlay comes up and nobody understands it. Can somebody call somebody? Are you available to potentially make an informal presentation or something
Sure,
like that? This would be
between-
helpful for the public to know, because I can understand their anxiety about this. I was a little bit taken by surprise as well. I have to to admit that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the sponsors, supervisor and the mayor, but between Paolo, myself, and Steve Wertheim, we can certainly be available over the, excuse me? Oh. The contact information is on the last slide. If we can get that up there, Paolo's information with his email and phone number. Certainly happy to field questions and talk through the details with anyone who would like to.
And we appreciate that. And just so we know, I mean, because again, I think it's implementing what would come to this under the current plan, right? What would come to the commission now? There's certain projects that would come as a large project authorization, but are there housing projects that would come as a CU to us under the current plan that this would bypass? So we're strictly looking at the projects, at least from the commission level, those that would come to us under the large project authorization provisions in this plan.
Yeah, you would see a large number of projects if this wasn't in place as 329 large project authorizations, and they would be before you in the typical way. They would also undergo, the whatever environmental, this CPE process, and however long that takes to churn through that, and there's no time limits, set for those, so they could,
Right.
they would definitely take a lot longer than 100.
But that's what we're talking about, is those kind of large project authorizations are the
Yes.
equivalent in this plan.
Yes.
That would bypass this process and
Yes.
be able to be approved by the
Correct.
department, not the smaller projects necessarily.
Correct.
All right.
And if I could, I mean, there's even, for example, I'm familiar with one large residential project that is proposing to do off-site BMR, so they would not be eligible.
Right.
They would have to come through the normal process because they are not doing on-site. They are building an off-site BMR project. So again, there's the subset of projects that would be eligible are, somewhat less than the normal list of projects.
Right. And I think to Commissioner Koppel's point, this is kind of a real preference to do on-site inclusionary, because you would be able to take advantage of this process. If you didn't, you're kind of engaged in more process. All right, well, that's all the questions we have. We look forward to hearing more about this and additional community input in the next week or so. So thank you.
Commissioners,
Oh, wait, sorry, Jonas, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome back to the San Francisco Planning Commission regular hearing for Thursday, May 3rd, 2018. Commissioners, we left off under your regular calendar on item 14A and B for case numbers 2016-002728, CUA and VAR at 2525 Van Ness Avenue. This is a conditional use authorization, and the zoning administrator will consider a request for variance.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brittany Bendix of Planning Department staff. You have before you a request to demolish a two-story, 9,980 square foot commercial building and to construct a 7-story, 70,080 square foot building containing 28 dwelling units, of which 85.6% will be 2 bedrooms, up to 2,000 square feet of ground floor retail, 28 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces, and 14 off-street below-grade parking spaces. Additionally, the project is seeking variances from the rear yard and dwelling unit exposure requirements of the planning code. These variances are triggered because of an irregularity in the southwest corner of the lot, where a portion of the building will project approximately 3 feet into the required rear yard. The project otherwise complies with all other requirements of the RC3 zoning. Since publication of the case report, the department has received 1 phone call in opposition to the project from a neighbor who lives at the opposite side of the block at the intersection of Franklin and Filbert, with concerns that the project will obstruct her view of Russian Hill. Additionally, the department received a letter from the Golden Gate Valley Neighborhood Association requesting that the project provide a 1-to-1 parking ratio. The project proposes a ratio of 1 parking space for every 2 dwelling units, which is consistent with the maximum permitted in the RC3 zoning district. Proposing a higher ratio would require conditional use authorization by the Planning Commission. The department is recommending approval of the project because it is, on balance, consistent with the Planning Code and the objectives and policies of the general plan. The project includes 28 dwelling units, again of which 85% are 2 bedrooms, and the project will also contribute to the city's affordable housing fund. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bendix. Project sponsor, welcome.
Good afternoon. Tuya Catalano with Ruben Junius and Rose, representing the project sponsor and owner. So this project is probably a good example of a site that's located not only along a major transit corridor, but is also surrounded mostly by residential uses. Yet today, the site is fairly underutilized. If I could have the overhead, please. On the overhead, sorry. It's on the computer right now. But on
SF Gov TV, if you go to the .com instead of the computer.
So on the overhead, you'll see the existing building, which is a 2-story building with a mix of retail and office uses, including a laundromat that's just closed. The surrounding context itself is mostly residential, including ground floor retail for those buildings that front Van Ness. Immediately next to this site is a 7-story, 27-unit building that was approved by this commission in 2010. So what we are proposing is a residential project, which is a better and more appropriate use for this site. We are maximizing the permitted density. 28 units is what is allowed, and the same number is proposed. The height and the massing of the project is consistent with the code and the adjacent building. On the overhead again, you can see an aerial view of the site today. The existing building has kind of a funky surface parking in the middle of the site, approximately right there, and you can see that the existing building currently backs up to the rear of the lot. So with the new residential building, we have a 25% rear yard setback requirement, which really creates an opportunity to expand the existing mid-block open space, which really should benefit several of the neighbors in the rear. As mentioned, majority of the residential units are 2-bedroom units with an average unit size of 1,500 square feet. We exceed the open space requirements. Parking is proposed only at a 0.5 ratio. The variance request itself is a very minor request. It's due to the fact that at the southwest corner of the lot sort of cuts off. We're talking only about a 20 square feet area that is impacted. So in sum, we have presented the project to 2 neighborhood groups, to the Van Ness Corridor Neighborhood Council, as well as to the Golden Gate Valley Neighborhood Association. I'm going to turn it over to the project architect, Russ Naylor, and he'll go over the design.
Good afternoon. Russ Naylor with NC2 Architects. If I could have the monitor. I'll just quickly walk you through the project, starting kind of from the basement up. We have our parking at the ground basement level, below grade level of the project. Some of the one next door, you can see that the top part of that is the ramp coming down from the street. At the ground floor level, the front of the building we have at the lower right corner, we have the residential lobby for the tenants, and then next to that we have a nice kind of retail space. Next to that, a minimum driveway access to get down below grade, and next to that, the second means of egress. The great thing about, we've been working with PG&E, and whereas before we had a vault actually in front of this, we were able to get that moved and out. So that's really nice. We have mostly a glassy front, even the garage door, and I'll talk about that more when we get up to the elevations. Typically, the building has both flats and townhomes. So on the back side of the building, across the back, you can kind of see the 4 townhomes that are lined up, and with large courtyard, rear yards for each of those. And then moving up the building, basically the building's laid out that each 4 corners has a flat, and in between it are the townhomes that are kind of stacked. And we'll talk about that more when we see the elevations. And just moving up the building kind of continues to have flats and townhomes. And then the uppermost floor of the building has 4 large flats, and it's slightly delineated and stepped back from the rest of the project, the base. The roof of the building has requirements for water filtering and all of that, or rain. It has a lot of green up there. There's a lot, most of it's a living roof. And then there's also areas, public for tenants to come up and take advantage of seeing the views. And also the 2 townhomes to the front of the project have private stairs and a private decks. Real quickly, there's some elevations of the project that are more CAD, but I have some better ones. This one is, that was quick. Okay, well, these are the materials that basically I have here for the project. I think we used a very kind of subdued and elegant palette for that area. Basically, it's consists of mostly painted metal and glass and some laser cut railings for a little bit of detail, and some cementitious panels for the body of the building, and a little bit of exposed concrete. Questions? Happy to answer any.
All right, we may. Thank you very much. Any public comment on this item? No. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any commissioner comments? Questions?
Well, if I need to, I will.
Commissioner Moore.
The site is obviously a housing site. What we're doing here is creating a twin to its neighbor to the north. I have a couple of questions because townhouses on upper floors mostly don't pencil out. That's a generic question, a generic observation. In San Francisco, we hear that all the time, that housing projects don't pencil out. My question is that when you build townhouses in the upper parts of a building, there's a large amount of usable space dedicated to stairs, internal stairs. And my question is, could this site be developed at a slightly higher unit count? Just a question. When it comes to the roof, we had discussions in this part of town a number of times, and the discussion is that we do not want to privatize roofs with stair penthouses. I do not quite understand why the mechanical equipment is not more held to the center of the building and combined as we typically do. Also, I believe that the railing reeds from the street elevation should be pulled back from the building side from all sides. We ask these kinds of questions systematically to literally everybody. We should be asking those same questions here. Housing in the site, again, is fine. The devil is in the details. So I'm raising the issue of how the roof is used as to whether or not townhouses on upper floors is exactly what we want. Particularly, they mostly don't pencil out. We hear this all the time. Penciling out has become a new standard in looking at building approval. And in this particular case, I think we could potentially create a slightly higher number of units. That's a personalized observation just for other commissioners to consider. To repeat, private penthouses cluttering the roof, particularly when you have to the east the downslope of Russian Hill facing west, looking down at a rather excessive roofscape, too many extrusions. Those would be my comments.
I mean, I'm generally supportive of the project. I mean, your comment about, I think next door we eliminated maybe the private stair penthouses in exchange for hatches. Is that doable here?
You're referring to the building next door? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember which project.
No, I'm not,
but it was one of them where
I'm
we
actually
had
the
some.
architect of that building as well, so
Oh,
I can
okay.
answer those questions. We do have the penthouses. We kind of minimized as much as we could as far as the slope on them. Not true like a hatch, if you will. Almost.
Is there a way to do a hatch on those, given that they're kind of on the
We
front
could
side of the
slope
building?
them so that because they rake away from the. Is that what you mean from the?
No,
oh.
I mean a true hatch.
Hatch.
I mean, which I think we did. It may not be on the project adjacent to it, or maybe the project across Filbert. I can't recall, but similar concerns came up, and we ended up using a non-penthouse, but a hatch for the private roof areas, recognizing, you need stairs to the upper roof and perhaps a penthouse for the remainder of the building. But it was those two penthouses on the front converted to a hatch.
To a hatch. Yeah, I haven't seen one really that I could imagine would be successful, because it feels like it would be, and I'm not quite sure about the exiting, if we needed to use that as the exiting down through the unit, if you could have a hatch like that, but.
Well, it definitely has been done. We've done it.
You have done
And so
it?
people
Absolutely,
have,
yes.
I mean, you could talk to the staff, because I know it's been implemented in other places.
Good
So
enough to
that, I certainly would entertain if we wanted to make that change. And then I would just ask, I mean, your point that it looks a little too much to me like the building next to it. I would just say, work with staff to kind of just make sure, I think the design works here. It just is a little,
And we have.
there's
worked-
a little more
Okay.
differentiation. I'm not, I don't want to dictate the design, but some work with staff to kind of differentiate, so it's not such a big field, given that the massing's the same also. But other than that, I think it's good. I'm supportive. I think it's a good project. Commissioner Moore.
I still would ask Mr. Nieder as to whether or not we could pull the penthouses and combine them more on the center of the roof rather than reading at the roof's edge. I think that's very disadvantageous, clustering them in an orientation with that views from Russian Hill are not basically looking at what looks like an extra story. We have done that in many cases and been very successful. When you look at major view sheds, and it's not about protecting views, but enhancing views, grouping them in a manner that they have the narrow side
Yes.
towards the main view, and
Right.
clustering them more in the
Instead of
center that they
sideways.
don't read from the side. And I would agree with Commissioner Hillis, and I observed the same. Let's not make these twin buildings. You have enough experience to make them read different, and I think that would be very much appreciated.
Okay.
Okay?
Definitely.
And then I still think that the railing should not be at the facade edge. That should be pulled back.
Pull the railing back from the
Yes,
facade.
that's correct.
Then. Okay. Thank you.
So Commissioner Moore, do you want to make a motion to eliminate the private
Yeah.
penthouse stairs, move the
Yeah,
railing back 5 feet?
I make a motion with a caveat that the staff works with the architect on eliminating private penthouse stairs and replace them with hatches, pull mechanical equipment into a combined location, orient in a minimum way that they don't read as an extra height and mass looking from the downslopes of Russian Hill, and hold the railing away from the front facade, moving it in western direction at a minimum of 10 feet, as the design here indicates.
Did you want to add a condition to work with staff to differentiate,
yes.
further
All-
differentiate the buildings?
That's correct. Yes,
And then can I get additional clarification on the private stair penthouses?
Just those two, I think it's those two private stair penthouses. I
Right.
mean,
But they become
to
hatches.
become hatches, so eliminate them
Just to
altogether.
become hatches,
Yeah.
not, okay.
And we have done that in newly approved buildings up and down the street because we want to prevent rooftop clutter.
Okay.
That is basically the objective here.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Koppel. So there is a motion that has been seconded to approve this matter with conditions, as have been amended, to include that the private penthouse stairs be replaced with hatches, that the mechanical equipment be pulled closer together to minimize the the obstruction, provide a minimum 10-foot additional setback on the railing, and work with staff to further differentiate the buildings. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. Zoning Administrator, what say you?
I'll close the public hearing and intend to grant with the standard conditions.
Very good. Unfortunately, Commissioners, I don't believe anyone from staff is here. We're moving so quickly that I don't believe any of them anticipated to be up yet. We may need another 5-minute break.
Okay, we'll take another 5-minute break.
calendar for items 15A and B. Case numbers 2015-003800 CUA and VAR. You will consider the conditional use authorization, and the zoning administrator will consider the variance.
Hey, good afternoon, President Hillis and members of the Commission, Doug Vu, department staff. Please accept my apologies for my tardiness. The project before you is a request for a conditional use authorization for a residential density to demolish non-historic additions to a former gas station and construct a new detached 4-story, 45-foot tall, and 7,793 square foot building that would contain up to 494 square feet of commercial use at the ground floor and approximately 7,300 square feet of residential use for 4 dwelling units. The project also includes 1,524 square feet of usable open space, 4 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces, and a 428 square foot 4-car garage. The historic gas station building on the site will be rehabilitated in place and used as a cafe or restaurant in conjunction with the newly constructed ground floor commercial space. The project proposes a 23-foot rear yard that requires the approval of a variance by the zoning administrator, who will consider this request immediately following the hearing for this item. The project is located in the southeast area of the Mission District and within the Calle 24 Latino Cultural District. The immediate neighborhood is residential in character, containing 2, 3, and multifamily dwellings. San Francisco General Hospital is adjacent across Portoro Avenue, and the 24th Street Mission NCT District is 2 blocks to the south of the project site. Since the packet was published last Thursday, the department has received 3 additional letters of support for the project. After analyzing all aspects of the project, department staff finds that it is on balance consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan and mission area plan. 1100 Portoro Avenue is an appropriate infill development that will add 4 new family-sized dwelling units to the city's housing stock, and would also permit the continuation of a limited commercial non-conforming use. The project's massing and scale are appropriate for the site's corner location. The design is complementary to the pattern of residential development in the neighborhood, and its construction will not cause a significant and unavoidable impact to the identified historic gas station on the property. In addition, the project will help activate the immediate area with new street trees, landscaping, and a neighborhood serving commercial use. The department finds that the project is to be necessary, desirable, and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and not detrimental to persons or adjacent properties in the vicinity. Based on these findings and those described in the draft motion, department staff recommends approval of the conditional use authorization with conditions. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vu. Project sponsor?
Yes, my name is Mark Topicher. I am the architect and the project representative today. I'd like to thank the Commission for hearing our project, and we are here, as Doug recapped, for the density to increase the units to 4, which is approvable by a conditional use, as well as we're requesting a rear yard variance due to the particular nature of the site. We have an existing 1920s gas station, which I've been told, and the reports have come in, that this is one of the first, if not the first, gas station in San Francisco. It essentially is a 12 by 12 room consisting of steel sash with a porte cochere that is approximately another 15 feet in length in front of the building. If we can have the overhead, we can see the existing site, which is a fairly big void at the corner of 23rd and Potrero Street, now that Potrero has been redone at the start of the project many years ago. At this point, we have strived to work with the existing historic structure, looked at a lot of different options, and ultimately have left the building in place as it currently exists. What we're proposing is to create a new 4-story building that sits to the west of the existing building. And create about approximately 500 square feet of new commercial space on the ground floor. The existing gas station building is unheated. It really does not have the ability to exist on its own. There's not enough room for toilet facilities, et cetera. So we see it as sort of an adjunct space that would serve some sort of restaurant or cafe use, and of course being catty corner from San Francisco General Hospital could be a big benefit. We have a nice outdoor area that could be developed as seating areas adjacent to the new contained commercial space. On the ground floor, we also have parking, a two-car wide parking space that, because of the large ceiling heights required for the commercial, we can implement a car stacker and actually provide 4 off-street parking spaces. And then further to the west, we actually do have a ground floor unit that is adjacent to the residential that currently exists along 23rd Street. This is a view looking up 23rd towards San Francisco General. The building of 4 stories, the hospital across the street is approximately 5 stories and up a little bit on grade, so I think it fits the neighborhood fairly well. We're looking at materials on the building, a brick veneer base, and the upper floors sheathed in a metal shingle that we are proposing different patterns and shades and colors. The rooftop on the building is, in fact, does contain some outdoor space that is actually privatized, and we have set back the areas from the property lines approximately 5 feet. So this is the southern property line, so the deck is 5 feet off of that, as well as at the rear open space. We've also pulled the roof deck back, and there would be 3 private roof deck areas, 2 of which are accessed by the units directly below on the 4th floor through a roof hatch, so there is no stair penthouse for the private stair access to the roof decks. But we do have 1 common stair penthouse that is needed for fire access and general accessibility, but that would be minimized with the sloping roof and kept to a very minimum height. It does sit towards the center of the building, so the ability for it to be seen is pretty remote. The units themselves, we have 3 3-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom unit. They're averaging about 1,500 square feet in space. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item? Nope, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioners? Commissioner Moore?
I assume that the building is sized correctly in the area where it sits. The gas station is hard to understand. I assume it falls under historic preservation. Is that correct?
It does, yes.
I hope it will work because it is so small. It's kind of almost like a bus stop, as your coffee bus stop. You could sit out there in the sun and drink your espresso, perhaps, if that's the way it works. But that is a little harder to understand. It has a little bit of a suburban feel. On the other hand, it is what it is. I think it's a difficult thing to conceive that in any other way of working. So I think the building in terms of unit size and everything else it does, hatches, use of roof deck is fine. So move to approve.
Second.
There's nothing further, Commissioners. There's a motion that has been seconded to approve this matter with conditions. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore? And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. Zoning Administrator, what say you?
I'll close the variance public hearing and intend to grant with standard conditions.
Very good. Commissioners, I will place this on items 16A and B for case numbers 2015-014876 CUA and VAR. At 749 27th Street, you will consider the conditional use authorization, and the zoning administrator will consider the request for variance. Please note that on January 11th, 2018, after hearing and closing public comment, you continued this matter to February 22nd, subsequently continuing to March 22nd, and again to May 3rd. You were all present, so you don't need to acknowledge anything.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeff Horn, Planning Department staff. The item before you is conditional use authorization for tantamount to demolition of a detached single-family home at 749 27th Street. This item was continued from January 11th Planning Commission hearing to allow the sponsor to make design revisions to address the Commission's concerns with the size of the proposed fourth floor and the compatibility of the proposed facade materials with the neighborhood context. The fourth floor has been reduced in size from 833 square feet to 529 square feet, and the total building size is now proposed to be 4,277 square feet. The facade materials have changed from the previous stucco with bronze corrugated metal siding accents to a more compatible vertical clear cedar siding with the secondary horizontal dark stained cedar siding. The project was continued to February 22nd and again to March 22nd, and then further to this date by planning staff to allow the sponsor more time to resolve Department of Inspection violations that have been issued on the status of the rear structure. DBI has confirmed that the majority of the rear structure is legal and its use as a dwelling unit, all of which is the non-conforming portion. And the portions within the buildable area will now be sought to be legalized under this permit. Some of these portions will be removed due to the proposed front horizontal addition to that rear structure. I submit to you 2 letters in opposition I received this week from the adjacent neighbor to the side and as well as across the street, as well as an email I received from the project sponsor earlier this afternoon. The case report I provided you contains large prints of the revised floor plans and elevations for the proposed front building, as well as floor plans of the rear building signifying the areas that are legal and need to be legalized under that separate permit. The sponsor has prepared for you, I believe, 2 models, one of the subject building, as well as a smaller scale of the neighborhood context, or the neighborhood to try to portray the context of the building's massing in comparison to the block face. So let's see. I think that is all. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Project sponsor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Just as a reminder, this particular project, I don't know if you recall or not, but I designed it specifically for a multi-generational family. Okay, they've owned the property for an exceedingly long time, and this is to house 3 of the generations currently. Their current house is in very poor shape. It's pretty much non-functional in terms of the floor plan. The grandmother is living in a little closet downstairs. So she's really anxious to get into a new house. So at the planning hearing that we had on January 11th, I was told by the commissioners to modify the design, that there were really no other issues. So I have done that. I took these comments as a challenge. I tried to keep it so that by reshaping the top floor, it's not going to look like a hat sitting on top of it, but I really wanted to try to incorporate.
You just have to stay, talking into that mic.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I really wanted to incorporate the top floor and keep it
integral in terms of the overall integrity of the design. So I think I'm very successful in doing that and have been able to do it. I also try to give a little bit more of a context of what's going on in the neighborhood. Okay, there's two very large, very modernistic buildings. I've given you some photographs of those. And then there's another one on this side. So I think we're really keeping very, very much in the context of the building. And I do think that this does help recede and pull back. And I'm very happy in the fact that I think the design is actually better than it was before. So the overall, square foot reduction was by over 300 square feet. The fourth floor, the exterior wall was shaved down. The rear was pulled back. There was a large roof deck. Took that roof deck down. It was like about 150 feet. Took it down to about 30 square feet. Most of the north elevation, even on the third floor, I pulled it back, which is adjacent to the neighbor to the west. So we also changed the exterior surface from stucco and corrugated aluminum to 1x8 clear cedar. We use a 1x8 square edge, so we have a nice smooth look to the entire exterior. Wherever it's recessed, we'll do a dark stain. The outer walls will be a light stain. So I think the scale of the home, especially with these modifications, will be very consistent with the neighboring homes at 739, 767, and 771 27th Street, which are all right close by, and also of a fairly modern design. So if you have any other questions, happy to.
All right, thank you. We may. Let's first open this item up for public comment, if there is any. Any public comment on this item? The mic is right there.
And I've lived in this house my whole life. My father built it when he was in his early 20s during the Depression with spit and paste, and it is now falling apart. It needs a renovation. I want to continue living there with my family. We're 5 generations, and I ask you to please allow us to live there in decency with a good roof over our head. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment on this item?
Hello. I'm the
You can pull that mic up too.
public speaking. Hi. I'm the grandson of Lenore Long and the son of my mom. I've been living there my whole life, and compared to like my friends' houses and like places, my neighbors, our house is pretty much like the worst on the block. My room is pretty small. I'm 19 years old and I'm in college right now, and I need a place to study sometimes, but I live in the same room as my siblings and my brother, and it just gets noisy and there's no privacy. It'd be really nice if we could get this going so we could build our house and I could study. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any additional public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it up to commissioner comments. Commissioner Koppel.
Yeah, I like the changes between what we're seeing now and last time. I know the site was a little challenging because of the topography and the hills going in 2 different directions. So I think the top floor is set back far enough where it's not making too much of a visual impact, and it does fit in contextually with the other neighboring houses.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners. There's a motion that has been seconded to approve this matter with conditions. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. And places us on item, Zoning Administrator, what say you?
I'll close the public hearing on the variance and intend to grant with the standard conditions.
Very good. Commissioners, item 17, case number 2018-001389, CUA at 2280 Market Street, conditional use authorization.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Veronica Flores, Planning Department staff. The item before you is a request for a conditional use authorization to allow a change of use to a Formula Retail Gym at 2280 Market Street at Noe Street. The property is located within the Upper Market NCT District and the 50X and 40X Height and Bulk Districts. Conditional use authorization is also required to allow the use that is greater than 3,000 square feet in size and also to operate before 6 a.m. The proposal involves Barry's Boot Camp. There are approximately 33 locations worldwide, and thus this is considered formula retail. The proposal will be taking over a currently vacant retail space, approximately 9,300 square feet in size, and most recently occupied by the Formula Retail Pharmacy, CVS. The proposal does not include any building expansions or facade alterations. Between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 10 p.m. on the weekdays and 6:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. on the weekends, Barry's Boot Camp is a class-based, high-intensity fitness training facility. Barry's Boot Camp will create approximately 20 new jobs, and 5 of which will be expected to be full-time. All employees are anticipated to live within the immediate surrounding area and either walk or take transit to work. The subject site is well served by public transit so that potential customers should not adversely affect the traffic flow. The project sponsor conducted a formula retail survey in early 2018. Based on this survey, the concentration of all formula retail establishments in the 300-foot radius vicinity from the project site is approximately 6% and approximately 20% within the Upper Market NCT District. To date, the department has received a total of 36 communications in support of the project, including the Dubois Triangle Neighborhood Association and the Castro Merchants. The project was proactive in all of their community outreach efforts and conducted community meetings, as well as introduced themselves to the neighbors and neighborhood organizations. Since the commission packet was published, the department also received 9 additional letters of support from local neighbors, and I have a copy available upon request. The department finds that the project is on balance consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan. The project will activate a vacant commercial storefront and bring in other pedestrian traffic into the area. The proposal does not impact the architectural fabric of the neighborhood, and the project meets all applicable requirements of the planning code. This concludes staff presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Project sponsor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Adam Shane, and this is Justin Roja, and we're the owner-operators for Barry's Boot Camp here in San Francisco. Barry's has, like Veronica said, over 30 locations globally. We have 3 locations in San Francisco right now, and this will be our 4th location in the city. And Barry's is an upscale boutique fitness company. We do fitness classes. We have locations in Soma on King Street, across the street from the ballpark, in the Financial District on Bush Street and Montgomery Street, and in the Marina on Lombard Street. And so we're very excited about the opportunity to be in the Castro, and a lot of our current clients are already coming from the Castro to our other facilities, so we're very optimistic that this will be a success. And so it's very important to us when we go into these communities and neighborhoods to work with the neighborhood organizations, because we're very dependent on the community to be successful because they're our clients. So we do fitness classes. Each class is 50 minutes to an hour, involves running and strength training. Interval training, so to speak, and we run about 8 to 10 classes a day and about 7 or 8 classes on Saturday and Sunday. So we're really excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We may have questions for you. We're going to first open this up to public comment. I've got one speaker card, Daniel Bergerac, and if others would like to speak, you are welcome on this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Daniel Bergerac, speaking on behalf of the 325 members of Castro Merchants, and we overwhelmingly, unanimously voted in favor of this project. We are really excited to welcome Barry's to the Upper Market Castro neighborhood. And I just want to speak real briefly about what a sensational job they have done as far as community outreach. From the very, very first meeting, they have been completely transparent with us. They have answered any questions. They have addressed any concerns we had. And I really think that this is a textbook case of how to do a conditional use in San Francisco. They have just exceedingly done well. So I would appreciate your approval for this project. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bergerac. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Koppel.
Yeah, thrilled to see this site potentially have a tenant. Large space, been vacant for a little while. I've been a part of the CrossFit community for a number of years and have been noticing that more types of gyms and fitness institutes are moving towards the Castro with flagship CrossFit and then the Core Power Yoga I think we approved last week. So I move to approve.
Second. Commissioners, if there's nothing further, there's a motion that has been seconded to approve this matter with conditions. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. Commissioners, we are on your discretionary review calendar for item 18, case number 2017-006654 DRM at 2071 47th Avenue. This is a discretionary review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Veronica Flores, Planning Department staff. The item before you is a request for discretionary review for the proposal located at 2071 47th Avenue, and this is at the intersection of Kintara Street. The project is located within the RH1 zoning district and the 40X heightened bulk district. The proposal includes a vertical and horizontal addition to an existing two-story single-family residence. The proposal also includes adding a new accessory dwelling unit under Ordinance 95-17. It also includes interior renovations and new front and rear decks. The department has not received any correspondence regarding the proposal. Today, the department requests that the Planning Commission take discretionary review and approve the project with modifications. Specifically, the project should be revised with the following design modifications which have not been addressed. To limit the horizontal rear addition to 2 floors, extending only 15 feet from the rear structural wall with side setbacks of 5 feet each. To extend the vertical addition only to the existing rear structural wall as a maximum, and to also decrease the vertical addition's floor-to-ceiling height from the current proposal's 10 feet to 9 feet, so as to reduce the overall massing of the new floor. As proposed, the project creates exceptional and extraordinary circumstances because it proposes a design that is not sensitive to the surrounding buildings. However, the modifications as recommended by staff will meet all applicable requirements of the planning code and conform to the residential design guidelines. This concludes staff presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, thanks. Project sponsor?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Okay, so we are up against a staff-initiated discretionary review, and we have provided some materials for your review and our planner's review. I did some massing forms for the rear yard, and the owners and I feel like this is in character with the mid-block range. A lot of properties here, it is a RH1 25% rear yard requirement. A lot of the properties are shorter in the yard, but there are a few right in the mid-block that do take up the similar massing that we felt that these owners were entitled to. In response to some of the comments, we did extend the first floor all the way to the 25% rear yard line. But then stepped back the second and third floors and brought the second and third floors stepping back as a bit of a pancake, or wedding cake, excuse me, form to reduce the mass. So we felt like this was kind of similar to the 3 buildings just to the north of our building. The subject property between the 2 larger buildings, or the adjacent property between the 2 larger buildings, he was at the pre-app meeting, and he voiced some comments, but overall he liked the project. He did not write a letter of approval. I did speak to the neighbor to the south. She was also concerned about light, and I did mention to her that it was to the north and that she did like the project as well. Neither one provided any comments for the owner. So, and then the last note I do want to make, for the extension all the way to the 25% at the first floor was in part because they wanted to keep the garage and provide an additional dwelling unit for the neighborhood. So we were able to create a sizable unit back there and still allow for a 2-car tandem parking. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmen Roman Murray, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our project. We have complied with the request, I believe, and the design that the architect did for us is basically to update a building that was built last century, in 1950. The rooms are small. There are no closet space, and very little room to move in the house. The garage, the first floor, there was an in-law apartment which was very dark, no air ventilation. So we decided to create a new unit there. Now, in respect with the new unit and the description that the planning department had, it says here that we have an additional and vertical and horizontal addition, and period. And after that, it's stated that additionally we are creating a new unit, but it's not the case. Including for a lay person like me, reading this, it's like we're having a vertical addition and a horizontal addition. And in addition to that, we are having another structure built. So where are we putting this? So it looks like a massive thing, but it's not. The addition, the new unit, is within the vertical, the horizontal addition. It's not separated. Now, so since we are creating this unit, because there is no housing in San Francisco, we have a house, we have a place with the space enough that we could create a very handsome and comfortable place for somebody, for a renter. Because it's an in-law, doesn't have to be all, not to have the amenities of this century. So, the upper floor where we live right now.
Your time is up.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, if you could just finish up in 30
yeah,
seconds,
just
please.
that I need more space for my clothes and my books and my piano, and I don't have that if I'm just about what they say that I should have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are you with the project team?
Yes, I am. I'm the husband.
Okay, so that was the time you had to speak. But do we have rebuttal here, Jonas?
We do not. This is a staff-initiated mandatory.
Okay. Well, we may have questions for you.
Am I allowed to speak?
So you were allowed, but your time was during that 5 minutes. So we'll take we take public testimony regarding this item, if there's any. I don't see any, so we'll close public testimony and open it up to commissioner comments and questions. Can I just, sir, if you want to, we'll give you 1 minute here.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So I'm the husband. I grew up in the house in the 50s and the 60s, and it was cramped then. And it seems that in modern times, people have more uses for their house than they had before. We just had a kitchen, 1 bathroom, 3 bedrooms, and a dining room, and that was it, and a garage. But we would really like to take advantage of the space that we have. We would like to have a library / office, which we don't have. Our office right now, we're both teachers. Our office is the dining room table. So we would like it to have larger bedrooms. The bedrooms as they're constituted now are just really cramped. When we met with the planning department staff, they wanted us to justify the use, why we needed bigger space. And so I thought I would address that.
All right,
Thank you.
Commissioner Moore?
I just want to briefly address that this commission takes the instructions and observations of trained planning staff as a baseline of how we look at a project. And that said, I read 3 conditions that the RDT is recommending to this commission, and I do agree that those are the correct observation to a project. It is not the size of a building 3 properties over, which gives you an idea of what to do, but it's the general context of what's required within the zoning district, and then structures directly adjacent to both of your sides. So the first thing we have here is that the horizontal rear addition should be limited to 2 floors, which I agree with, and it should not extend more than 15 feet from the rear structural wall, which is kind of considered to be like a pop-out. And that we have this discussion with every property where similar things are proposed. There is not anything that planning tries to stick to you, but that is what we need to do here, and we get these instructions again and again. And there are people just like yourself who would like to have a larger place, but what you are achieving in the limits that planning sets, you still will have a very livable house, because the floor plan as it is designed has a lot of extras, which I believe for comfortably sized house are not really completely necessary. The second point planning makes is that the vertical addition should only extend to the existing rear structural wall as a maximum. I would agree with that. And then there is an ask for decreasing the vertical addition in floor height from 10 to 9 feet. 9 feet is still a very comfortable height. The majority of residential we see is 8.5, 8.75, so we are way within comfortable, well-sized room heights. The comment I would like to make, in addition to what RDT says, the ADU as it is proposed is actually not an ADU because it is fully accessible from the main house, which does not make it a separately accessible, individually identifiable unit. And that, under ADU definition, does not meet the requirements. You can basically come from the main floor and enter into the unit, and it becomes basically just an expanded space for a single-family house. So we cannot use that as an argument for giving this very large addition extra benefits of having added a second unit. That has not occurred within the rules that we normally have to apply. So some of my comments. If the project would be modified as proposed by RDT, and there would be proper attention paid to the ADU being fully independently accessible and separate from the main circulation of the home, this project is approvable, but needs some additional work.
Okay. Can I just ask staff, if you can put up A102? It's always hard when we have a staff-initiated DR and we don't have the actual drawing of what this would look like with the modifications you're proposing? So can you just, I mean, I get Commissioner Moore's comment was on that entry, but can you just walk us through the proposed changes, how they would impact the floor plans there?
Sure. So, with respect to the limitation to the depth of the horizontal addition, I'll just draw in a dash line of the estimates. So, for the bottom two floors, it would be about 15 feet back and the 5-foot setbacks. So, one moment. So for the bottom floor, it will impact what's currently proposed as a living room, and we're looking for relief along the both property lines. We only have one side setback currently, and then for the second floor, currently
But just go back to the first floor.
Sure.
So how would that? I mean, it seems it would be under where you drew it difficult to get a one-bedroom ADU in there.
So it would have to be reprogrammed. I don't have the specifics on the square footage and what the actual program will be. We would work with the staff architect accordingly to make sure that we can accommodate the 1 or 2 bedrooms or whatever it may be. I can invite the project sponsor up if we do have the square footage estimates at this time.
Okay. So just go to the second floor for a minute, and then we can. So that this floor is fine. I mean, I think you can get that bedroom in. You can kind of modify the bathroom size. You've got the side setback is already there on the first floor or on the second floor.
Yes,
Well, it's
there's
it's a deck, so you
kind of a
eliminate
wraparound
the
deck.
deck on the thing. All right, and then the next floor, you eliminate the horizontal. I mean, the horizontal and vertical addition altogether. Yeah, the only concern I have is the first floor. I like the idea of an ADU there and just continuing to make that a livable one-bedroom unit. Because it's a 25-foot lot, 5-foot setbacks on either side would get you to a 10-foot wide
You can do it.
bump out. 15-foot, yeah. But why the recommendation on this first floor? To reduce?
So our standard department comment for when we have adjacent buildings with a similar layout is to, similar to Commissioner Moore stated, allow us pop out of sorts, but rather than the traditional 12-foot deep pop out, in this case, we're recommending a 15-foot deep pop out with the side setbacks from the property lines of 5 foot each. So that is a standard comment that we provide, and we've applied it to this property and this proposal as well.
Okay. Commissioner Moore?
I believe that when you really kind of just look at what you have and what's proposed here, if you really start to re-sequence some of the elements that are proposed, there's a media room, there's a living room, there's a large number of bathrooms, etc. There are quite a few nooks and crannies. In terms of a more efficient layout, I think you can fully achieve a very comfortable expansion with the pop-out as proposed. And I think if you carefully design it, you can also get your ADU in there. You just need to kind of treat the bottom floor a little differently. It's just basically rearranging the pieces and coming up with something which is quite workable. I've looked at it for quite a while, and we are not here to design it, but I think the department has a very good template understanding for what pop-out should and shouldn't be in order not to impact other properties. The real issue on the extent of this particular proposal as it is given to us, the incredible issues of privacy with adjoining people, including basically creating a stepped section which really mega mansions the block, which is inappropriate to the setting in which this building occurs.
Delvin Washington, Southwest Team Leader. I just want to reiterate what staff had said about our standard pop-outs, 15 feet usually, 15 feet back, 5 on the side. The commission may want to consider, too, that we, in this case, are entertaining an accessory dwelling unit that we do want to be livable as well. There are a lot of options on the upper floors for the project sponsor to tweak and adjust this so that they can comply with our recommendations and still provide them adequate habitable living space. Perhaps the commission, again, as a commission, you do have the ability to use your discretion. We take a strict approach to this as staff, as we should. You are the commission, so thank you.
You know, and I get that. I just want to make sure there's livable, and the plans are a bit confusing because there's a lot of, I mean, as you walk in the ground floor, there's storage and circulation. There's a bath, which I think goes with the upper unit, and a washer dryer. So there's kind of, I think there's room to make a livable unit even with staff's recommendations. Just gets it, there's a lot going on that first floor entry as you go in. And I agree with Mr. Washington. I want to make that unit livable, but I think given the amount of kind of excess uses on that floor, it probably can be done with the staff's recommendation. Commissioner Moore.
I actually appreciate, and I want to reiterate what Mr. Washington says. This is about looking at projects of this kind with an equitable eye and not just kind of nipping and tucking because there is whatever. This is a standard lot. This is an RH1, and I appreciate the department's kind of neutral eye in terms of what is too much and how it works. So I think we should move to what are we supposed to do? Take
DR
and modify the project based on staff's recommendations and as sketched out by Ms. Flores, and have the staff continue to work with the applicant so that we get this right, including how the ADU is properly accessible from the outside and independent from the living space.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
That's the motion.
Thank you, Commissioners. There's a motion that has been seconded to take DR and approve this matter with staff's recommended modifications. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye. Would you please also read into the record that the ADU has to be modified? That is an addition to staff's recommendation.
And that the ADU be modified
Right,
under
to meet
staff's.
meet standard requirements. Staff did not catch that the ADUs.
Yeah, it's to make it
Separate
independently
engines.
accessible.
Yes.
It's just to make that ADU independently accessible.
Very good. On that motion, then, Commissioners, to take DR and approve this matter with staff recommendations as well as making the ADU independently accessible. Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0. Commissioners, that'll place us on item 19 for case number 2017-003986-DRP-02 at 739 DeHaro Street. This is a discretionary review. Commissioners, please be advised that we did receive a request for continuance from one of the DR requesters who first requested a continuance based on the number of commissioners, that there were only 4, and then later that he was traveling already in Florida or on his way to Florida. It was not entirely clear. So I don't know if you want to take up the matter of continuance or just hear the item.
Is he here? Are you here? All right, so you're here, so let's take the item and then see where we go with the item.
Back this morning.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Marcel Boudreau for Department Staff. This is an item, a building permit with 2 publicly filed discretionary review applications. The project includes remodeling of an existing 2-story single-family dwelling with a vertical addition of a 3rd story and a new garage at the street level. The project also includes renovation of the front facade and other interior renovations. The project is located within the RH2 zoning district and 40X height and bulk district. The concerns of the DR applications are outlined as follows. Under the first DR, there's too much intrusion into the mid-block open space relative to neighboring properties. A new driveway and curb cut would be dangerous to pedestrians, and propose a relocation of the garage to the downhill side. And lastly, under that first DR, a top floor should be required to line up with the rear of the adjacent property at 745 DeHaro, the uphill neighbor, with a 5-foot side setback to protect light and air. Second DR filed. First point, the facade is too modern and not in keeping with the neighborhood character. And second point, the total building height is too tall and doesn't appropriately step down the hill. The residential design advisory team reviewed the project following a submittal of request for discretionary review and found the project does not demonstrate exceptional or extraordinary circumstances and meets the standards for the residential design guidelines. The department has received from the project sponsor 9 form letters signed by neighbors within the vicinity of the project who are in support of the project. The department received a 2-page letter from a neighbor who resides at 769 DeHaro Street, supporting the 2 DR requesters, stating his concerns that the project presents the issue of non-compliance with the residential design guidelines and the legal basis for his concerns. With all of that information, the department finds the project to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and recommends you do not take DR and approve the project with the modification that the architectural drawings confirm the elevation change for the driveway on the property, which will be reconciled on site. The project sponsor has provided this additional information. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll take, are both DR requesters here?
Now we have one. One is in transit, so hopefully
Okay,
5 minutes.
so we'll see if they arrive, but go ahead.
My name is Michael Montgomery. I, along with my wife and 2 children, reside at 745 DeHaro, the neighboring property to the proposed project at 739 DeHaro. I first learned of this project in January of 2017, and over the past 15 months, I've attempted to work with my neighbor to address the concerns of my family and fellow neighbors, as highlighted in my discretionary review application. Despite initiating multiple in-person meetings, emails, phone calls, my neighbor has refused to make even a single change to their plans to accommodate our concerns. I've tried to be constructive and flexible in my approach, presenting multiple potential options that would address our concerns, all of which could be accomplished without reducing the habitable space of the project. I've been very clear and consistent with my concerns, which are threefold. First, the project will eliminate light and air access to 4 of my grandfathered property line windows facing the project. Second, the location of the new curb cut for the project garage creates a dangerous condition for all pedestrians, especially those with mobility issues. Finally, the project facade design and materials are incompatible with the buildings in the neighborhood. For each of these concerns, I have proposed modifications that would address our concerns without reducing the proposed square footage of the project. I will now walk you through our proposal. Can we get the presentation? Thank you. First, for the grandfather property line windows, per page A303 of the submitted plans, you can see the 4 grandfather property line windows. These windows provide the only light and air access to my children's bathroom and provide the primary source of natural light to the back part of my dining area in the late afternoon, which allows my family to eat dinner without the use of electricity. The project, as proposed, would require sealing all of these windows, thereby significantly affecting the light and air access to the rooms served by those windows and increasing the use of electricity in my home. In looking at the project sponsor's design, the project could easily be modified to minimize the impact of light and air access on our property line windows without decreasing the habitable space of the project if the second floor plan is redesigned modestly. As you can see from the page A202 of the project plans, there is ample unused space on the second floor design. This is a 2-story ceiling that can be used to accommodate light air access to our windows via a setback or light wells on their top floor, again, without a reduction in habitable space. Second point related to the proposed location of the garage. As you can see from page A301 of the project plans, the proposed design and garage location will create an unacceptable change in sidewalk grade along the common property line that makes a steep sidewalk even steeper. The project sponsor has refused to discuss the change with the Bureau of Street Use and Mapping until after the project is approved by the Commission. This is of particular concern to me because my wife and I have elderly parents who visit frequently, as well as 2 young children, a daughter who's 2, still finding her balance, a son who is 7 months and likely to be a walker. We use that garage door of our property as our primary entry and exit, given the ground floor access when heading downhill to Jackson Park or to the grocery store. The main reason for the steep drop-off is due to the decision to place the garage on the steepest part of the sidewalk in front of the project sponsor's property. As you can see from page A120 of the project plans, the sidewalk on the uphill side of the project sponsor's property is noticeably steeper than the downhill side, which I estimate to be about 2.5 times steeper. Given the narrow sidewalk on our street, there's only 10 feet between the street and the house frontage. We don't have the space to use to create a retaining wall or a safety railing or other things like that would create additional safety. And so I am proposing that the project sponsor relocate the garage to the less steep north side of the property, which would improve the safety for pedestrians. Finally, related to the project facade, per page A301 of the submitted plans, The project sponsor has proposed design with vertical bands that are inconsistent with houses in the neighborhood and make no attempt to visually unify the neighborhood aesthetic. Happy to walk you through houses on our block face. Although there are multiple styles, none of these homes include anything that resembles the vertical bands proposed by the project sponsor. Every single one of these houses has unobstructed windows facing the street, and what the project sponsor is proposing is a dramatic contrast to a unifying look, which draws attention to the home rather than blend in with the neighboring homes. So in summary, I'm requesting that the commission to oppose the following conditions of approval. One, relocate the garage to the less steep downhill side of the property. Alternatively, continue the hearing until the project sponsor has consulted with the Bureau of Street Use and Mapping and demonstrate that the sidewalk in the front of the garage can be implemented to ensure pedestrian safety. Two, modify the second floor design to incorporate a side setback or light wells to allow light and air and access to my grandfathered property line windows. And three, modify the project facade to remove the proposed privacy screens and other design revisions so the street facade design blends in better with the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You have 23 seconds if you need them. But you don't have to take them.
I don't need
All
it.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
All right, so the other DR requester is not here, so we'll take public comment in opposition to the project in support of the DR. Christopher Cole?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. First, I join in the comment about the driveway. It is a steep area, and my understanding is that the Bureau of Street Use and Mapping does have certain requirements, and I really think that that's something that should be available to the Commission and to the neighborhood to know whether the driveway can be constructed in such a way that is safe. It's a steep hill going north, and then it's also a steep hill going east. So that is a concern that I have as somebody who walks down that street at least five days a week, just safety there. But I really wanted the balance of my comments to be about the design guidelines, because I really do feel that those have been not given the weight that they deserve. I attached a copy of the Williams case that I'm sure all of you have probably seen 50 times. The Williams case that says that the residential design guidelines have the force of law. They are as important and must be taken into account as much as the zoning or building codes. And this just has not been done. The short shrift that this has been given, we took it into account and we found that there were no exceptional circumstances. Well, there are exceptional circumstances. I was part of getting these residential design guidelines together before they were voted on. So it's sort of a personal thing with me as well, that light and air are not something that should be ignored or given short shrift. Here we have a situation where these side windows can be given light and air by giving a 5-foot setback from the proposed project on the side that it matches the DR requesters. A DR requester put up a picture of showing how much unused space there is in the project. Some of that space can be reconfigured to allow a 5-foot setback next to these side windows and allow the 745 property to have light and air. That was one of the whole purposes of the residential design guidelines, is that something that is not required by zoning, something's not required by the building codes, is required by the residential design guidelines. It was an effort to have some good neighbor policies given the force of law, and they do have the force of law. So those are my 2 points, and I would ask that the Commission take discretionary review and assure that those 2 points are taken care of. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any additional public comment in support of the DR? Seeing none, project sponsor, welcome. Jonas, normally they would have 10 minutes because there's 2 DRs.
They normally would, but the second DR requester didn't speak, so unless they show
10
up.
minutes, but it
I can
obviously will
go.
take your judgment.
It's up to you.
Yeah, can you do it? Can you do it in 5, or do you? I mean, I know you prepared 10. All right, let's go 7.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, my name is Jamie Austin. I am the owner of 739 DeHaro Street, along with my husband, David Deming. We purchased 739 DeHaro in 2010 and live there with our 2 children, ages 4 and 7. We are deeply involved with the local Potrero Hill community. From my house, I walk our son to a local Potrero Hill school, and then I work at California College of the Arts, just at the bottom of the hill.
You just may want to shift that up so we can see it.
We want to live in San Francisco for the long haul, but we really face the need to right-size our home for our family. Currently, our kids share 1 small bedroom, which won't work with the mixed genders forever. We share 1 bathroom. Our basement is only accessible through exterior aging non-code compliant staircases. And so we chose Anne Fougeron, a respected and award-winning San Francisco architect, also a fellow woman in arts and design, to design a neighborhood-appropriate remodel to accommodate our growing family. You've already heard the issues listed at the top, so I won't rehash those, but this presentation will give a response to each point, and you will hopefully see that in each case, the current project, already compromised for the benefit of the neighbors, meets all San Francisco code and residential design guidelines, involves nothing exceptional and extraordinary, and has explicit support from 9 immediate neighbors. We've spent a lot of time with the DR requester at 745 DeHaro trying to find a solution. We've met with them over 10 times since the pre-application meeting. We just don't understand why they keep claiming that we have not done anything for them. We did all these things without being compelled to change anything by the planner or the RDAT. In fact, both planning and RDAT have approved every design choice that we have made. Our voluntary concessions include 5-foot setback on the top floor at the 745 DeHaro property line to help preserve light, air, and views. This is not required by code, residential guidelines, or norms of the neighborhood. We've limited our ground floor extension to 6 feet versus the allowed 12 feet. We've limited the building to 2 stories. We are 18.5 feet below the allowed height. The total increase in our home is only 7 feet and 9 inches, and this is more than allowed by code, and we have a simple integrated facade that blends with neighbors' setbacks. We have broad support from the neighborhood. This is an overhead picture of our block with our house highlighted in blue there in the center, and locations of neighbors who signed our 9 letters of support highlighted in green. The 2 DR requesters are highlighted in yellow, both uphill from us. And they keep talking about neighborhood concerns, but the vast majority of the neighborhood supports our project. We have 9 letters of support that were part of our DR packet, and an additional neighbor who's here today. And this includes 3 adjacent neighbors, both downhill and behind us, and our neighbor directly across the street. This is a similar overhead view of our block. Our building envelope is highlighted in green. Adjacent property building envelopes are in blue, and the rest of the block face is in gray. As you can see, our proposed rear extension is very modest. Most of our neighbors intrude much further into their backyards, and we have voluntarily limited this extension. Our rear extension is also voluntarily set back on all levels. First, let me explain this drawing a little bit. The shaded red area represents what we are allowed to build on each floor according to the code and design guidelines. The gray shaded area is what we propose to build, and here you can clearly see the concessions that we've made on every level of the house. At the basement level, only a section of our house is extending to 6 feet versus the 12 feet allowed. Our 2 downhill neighbors go to full depth. On the first floor, we are only adding a small kind of window angle, and on the second floor, we have added a 5-foot voluntary setback from the DR requester's property line, angling back. And again, no one told us we had to do this. We chose to do all of this for the benefit of the neighbors. You'll also notice that our downhill neighbor made no similar concessions for our benefit when they did their remodel, including covering one of our north-facing lot line windows. The top floor we know is sensitive given the DR requester's non-conforming property line windows. Here's a drawing showing the rear elevation of the DR requester's home. I'd like to highlight a few things. As you well know, there's nothing extraordinary or exceptional about closing up or covering up property line windows. And for example, right behind us at 636 DeHaro, our rear neighbor, they covered up property line windows of their uphill neighbors just this year, and that's a 5-story project, much larger than ours. Our downhill neighbor at 733 DeHaro also covered up our property line windows when they remodeled, and it is clear that the DR requester will have ample, even enviable access to light and air, including 2 full-height sliding glass doors opening onto a main deck that will remain, a 3-foot by 3-foot picture window that will remain, 2 3-foot by 3-foot windows on the opposite south wall that will remain, And we have noted throughout our planning process the windows that were meant to be covered up. Now let's have a look at what this will look like from inside of the property. This is a picture that the previous owners took while marketing the property. It's publicly accessible from a local realtor website, and it shows the interior of the room where the property line windows will be covered. But all of the windows and doors highlighted in red will remain uncovered. Specifically, there will be a large picture window and two separate sliding glass doors that lead out onto a deck, and this alone offers ample access to light, air, and the view. And two additional large picture windows on the opposite side. All of these windows are east and south facing, providing much more light than north facing property line windows that will be covered. This all adds up to light and air access that is comparable, if not better, than most properties on the block, and indeed enviable compared to San Francisco in general. Here's another view of the same room. Okay, the non-opening windows were outlined in black, and those were the ones that will be covered up. But as you can see, literally right next to them were other windows offering light and air. We just don't understand why the DR requesters are so worried about the driveway and the curb cut, honestly. Driveways and curb cuts are the norm in our block and our neighborhood, as we demonstrated in our DR response, and they are often directly adjacent to neighbors, just as we propose. As the DR requesters noted, we live on a steep hill. Walking up and down the hill to and from the car with our children and all their items is exhausting. We're proposing a very modest one-car garage that only impacts one parking place. All but two other properties on the 700 block of DeHaro have a driveway and curb cut. Both DR requesters have a driveway and curb cut that are both closer to the public right-of-way than what we are proposing. 7 other places on the block have adjacent or double-wide driveway cuts, and our proposed garage is set back approximately 3 feet from the DR requesters' garages. I won't spend a long time on this one, but adjacent driveways and curb cuts are common even on steeper streets than ours. Here at 20th Street, just around the corner from us, they're on a 24% grade, and you can see they have 4 adjacent driveway and curb cuts, and the pedestrians, including us, are just fine on that street. For avoidance of all doubt, we've submitted detailed descriptions, much more detailed than is typically done at the stage, of the new driveway and curb cut to show very modest elevation changes and no warping of the sidewalk in front of the DR requester's house. Our house is set back approximately 3 feet further than DR requester's house, so none of the warping happens in the public right-of-way.
All right.
In summary...
You'll also have a 3-minute rebuttal.
Okay.
All right. Or 2-minute rebuttal. Okay. So hold those thoughts. So we'll take public comment in support of the project, if there are any here. Okay.
Hello, my name is Emma Williams. I live across the street at 730 DeHaro Street, so I'm a neighbor. And I just wanted to come and support Jamie and Dave on their project because I think they're exemplary neighborhood citizens. The remodel that they're proposing really doesn't seem out of character with a number of remodels that have been done up and down the street, including adding height to houses, changing the facade, actually including the DR requesters' home themselves, I believe, has been remodeled significantly from its original facade. So to say that there's some kind of conservation that needs to be taking place because the neighborhood is so well preserved for its original facade I don't think is very true, and it would totally be in character. This remodel isn't particularly, extraordinary, and they've made very concerted efforts to reach out to all the neighbors and make sure that we're all well aware. If we had any questions, they were open to us asking and talking to them, and they've been very accommodating in my interactions with them about this and any other issue around the neighborhood. They've been very accommodating, and so I wanted to support them to make sure that their project can go through, because I know they have a growing family, and I can totally sympathize that with myself as I'm expecting my second, and it would be a loss to the neighborhood if they weren't able to resize their home very modestly to accommodate that. Yeah, I think those are all of my points, but I just wanted to say that, they're really great neighbors. I really think they've been very accommodating. They've really reached out. I think they've done their due diligence, and they've made many accommodations to their neighbor, and now I just want to say that, let's push this through. I think it's well worthy to be pushed through. So anyways, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, DR Well,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can,
I think we should hear them.
yeah, we'll give you 3 minutes here. All right.
So I've lived on Potrero Hill since 1978, and for the last 21 years on DeHaro Street. Through those years, we have successfully convinced and or fought for keeping the row for gabled cottages to retain that feature. Though the homes do not have historical value, they are part of the neighborhood character of small cottages that once belonged to artists, longshoremen, and steelworkers. I'm hoping that the project sponsors respect the neighbors' request to retain this particular feature of the gabled roof in their remodel, no matter how big they want to go. In addition, I hope they can respect their immediate neighbors' concerns who will be losing a lot of light and air because of this remodel. I respect their need for more space in a garage, but I'm hoping they are respectful of us as well. Our neighborhood has always had a cooperative spirit. I realize that the neighborhood is changing, but I hope that we can convince the project sponsors will listen to our concerns and make adjustments. So far, there has been no effort to do so, much to our frustration.
All right, thank you. So you've got a 2-minute rebuttal, the DR requester, the original.
So just first want to clarify, we are not attacking their character. We also want their project to go through, but with some modest modifications, get them the house they want, the space they want. We're not challenging any of that. I want to reiterate the fact that they have not made a single change to their plans since it was first submitted to the city. So all of the accommodations they walked through were accommodations they decided to make when they submitted the plans, nothing that anyone has ever asked for. When we raised concerns, they were ignored, and no changes have ever been made. And talking about the support from the neighbors, obviously we have 3 immediate neighbors who are here, who have all written letters to the commission and are all impassioned about this. Of the 9 support letters, they were all form letters. Only 5 live on the block. Of the 5 that live on the block, 3 people have either moved already, are in the process of moving, or the house is not their primary residence. And so I wanted to make that point clear. Related to the property line windows, obviously there are lots of examples where property line windows are boxed up. There are also many examples where the commission or neighbors, just being neighborly, have permitted property line windows to receive additional light via light wells or a setback. So look, I think what we're asking for are modest modifications to the plan, and we're hoping that can be pushed forward and they can move forward with their project. Thank you.
Thank you. Project sponsor, you have 2 minutes.
Regarding neighborhood character, we just wanted to point out that our neighborhood character is mixed with several modern facades. This is one just around the corner at 20th and Wisconsin Street that also has some of the same privacy screens that we're proposing, and that's just around the corner. In addition, we have an image of the other side of our street, opposite of our house, that you'll see the same trends. Our street has many different architectural styles, including several clearly modern facades with similar features, particularly here at the top of the block at 770 DeHaro and 20th Street. These are quite similar to what we are proposing, actually even taller. And like our side of the street, the vast majorities have driveways and curb cuts, 3 of which are double wide or adjacent, just as we are proposing.
You just need to speak in the mic there so we can hear.
I'd also point out there's no consistency of gabled versus flat roofs. In fact, there's more flat roofs on the block than gabled.
We've made a lot of effort to reach out with all of our neighbors. I would disagree that I think all the letters of support were people who were really engaged in the process with us. I think in general, the vast part of the neighborhood is supportive of this. So in summary, we just really wanted to show that the current project already compromised for the benefit of neighbors. It meets all San Francisco code and residential design guidelines. It involves nothing exceptional or extraordinary and has explicit support from 9 immediate neighbors. We'd really like to request that the commission make a decision today. We've been waiting since March 7th, 2017, when we submitted our plans. We're excited to build our house for our family that will allow us to stay in San Francisco for the long haul. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that'll close this portion
You
of the
should
hearing.
probably afford the second DR requester rebuttal as well. And ma'am, what is your name? Because I have the second DR requester as a Barry Minot. Okay.
It should come up. SF Gov TV, can you pull up the computer screen? There it is.
There we go.
So
Just pull that mic.
all these houses used to be little cottages, as I was saying earlier, but the owners who developed them to be bigger spaces always retained that gabled A-frame shape. So to be reminiscent of Ventura Hills' character of that time. So I'm hoping that we can retain that.
Okay, thank you. No, that's all we have. We close this portion of the hearing and open it up to commissioner comments and questions. I just have if you can, it's up to the project sponsor, you had that picture of the interior of the adjacent home, and just so we can I just wanted, you ran quickly through kind of the windows that were being covered. I mean, on the whole, we see a lot of kind of additions. This one's pretty modest. I think you kind of respect the topography on the height. So I don't think there's anything, at least that I see, that's exceptional or extraordinary about this. I just, we run into this issue a bit on lot line windows. They're obviously not protected. I think these were probably put there because there's a view to that side. But can you just run through which ones are being proposed to be covered?
All of the windows highlighted here, actually you'll see two of them are actually full-length, full-height sliding glass doors that open onto a deck. That would be this one here and this one here.
Yep.
Those are both doors that open onto a deck, light and air. These are picture windows, you can see. All of those will remain uncovered. None of those are being covered.
In the far one between between the cabinets, that's into the adjacent. That's not into your property.
That's right.
the other
That
side.
faces
Okay.
south.
All right.
South-facing window,
Yep.
lots of light.
Yep.
This is another view. So this, you can see, this is the north-facing side.
The red windows
these,
are the same two ones you showed us to the south.
That's
before.
exactly right. So these are the same two facing south as you saw in the previous picture, and then these are two facing north that would be covered. So you can see, yes, light not coming in from here, but right here, adjacent windows that'll provide ample light, in our opinion.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead if you want to add a comment to that.
So, I showed two of the windows. I would say I get direct sunlight from my northernly facing windows for 4
You
months.
speak into that.
Sorry, I get direct sunlight from the northern facing windows for 4 months out of the year. They're showing two of the windows. The other windows, two more. One is in a bathroom, the only access to light and air. The other is farther back, which draws light back into the room, particularly late in the evening. Two of the windows they highlight are in my neighbor Barry's yard. It's an open lot with trees. I would get more light from those if they were just a white wall. It's just I get darkness from the leaves. So I am significantly impacted toward the back half of my house, and those are the windows that if a light well were created, I could easily get access to the back part of my house without modifying any part of their floor plan.
All right. Thank you. I'm generally comfortable with the project. I think it's a modest addition to a small house, but not making it anywhere near what we see kind of in other projects. I get there's going to be an impact to you from the covering of kind of lot line windows. We see that often. It's unfortunate, but they're there and kind of not protected under the rules. So I'm comfortable with the project as proposed. Commissioner Moore.
Oh, Commissioner Fong was before me, that's fine. I would have liked to see a 3D massing, and I don't see any materials. Obviously, the architect is well known, does very good work. The building is a little bit self-centered. That is, it's hard to understand what is behind the window screens there. But it is code compliant, meets the residential guidelines, does its stepping. It's a modern addition versus a gabled house. And it is difficult to take DR other than looking for a neighborly gesture which didn't occur. And we cannot really enforce it because while I believe property line windows on older buildings should perhaps be a neighborly gesture, we cannot enforce that. I would have liked to see a certain recognition of that gesture, but I believe there seemed to be a little bit of animosity between the parties. Why, how, I don't know, but this is nothing we can really physically deal with. We cannot take on getting in between that non-resolved discourse between the two parties. So I'm not making a motion. I'd hoped that there would be something, but it's not happening.
Commissioner Fong.
Thank you. I appreciate the nod to longshoremen and the history of the area, but it's not mandatory. The gabled roofs, while I think they are a number of them in a row, they're not necessarily sister houses. And so I don't see anything exceptional or extraordinary here, and move not to take DR and approve the project.
Second.
Seeing nothing further, Commissioners, there's a motion that has been seconded to not take DR and approve the project as proposed. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 4-0.
All right, and that's the last item. The meeting is adjourned.